Going Beyond is a presentation of Beyond Housing, helping entire communities become better places to live with RareGem Productions.
We're going beyond.
Today on Going Beyond.
On today's show, we're going to have a very interesting conversation about a topic of inclusion, but inclusion in a different space that you've not heard on this show before. It's in the bioscience world.
Because what we saw is that in this sector, and specifically in the life science industry, you had a dearth of minorities and women that were starting these type of businesses. They were well represented by men, as well as some of our other ethnicities, such as Asian and Indian Americans here in the U.S. So we're looking at how do we get these folks that are traditionally outside to start thinking about these types of opportunities.
Joining me on today's show is Dr. Cheryl Watkins, who is the Director of Bioscience and Entrepreneurial Inclusion at BioSTL. Beyond Housing is going beyond.
That and more ahead today on Going Beyond with Chris Krehmeyer, right after this.
Everyone has a part to play in this, and that everyone must play a part in this, because this cannot be from the top down. It can't be mandated by the federal government or by the states or whatever. This has to be done in an individual, person-to-person, heart-to-heart, soul-to-soul, community by community. This is how this work will be done, to transform communities from the inside out, to create a healthier community in every way, physically, emotionally, mentally. And I think that by connecting each other, that's how that begins to happen, when we realize that we have so much in common, that we're so much more alike than we are different.
If we as a community have an awareness and understanding to react and respond differently to situations in our lives, we are going to create true community change. We have to recognize the true cause, the root of what's wrong with somebody. Working not to address the symptoms, but to address the cause. It's time to thrive. Be alive and well. Join this movement at aliveandwellstl.com. RareGem Productions proudly presenting the positive.
We're going beyond. Welcome to this edition of Going Beyond. I'm your host, Chris Krehmeyer, President and CEO of Beyond Housing. On today's show, we're going to have a very interesting conversation about a topic of inclusion, but inclusion in a different space that you've not heard on this show before. It's in the bioscience world. Joining me on today's show is Dr. Cheryl Watkins, who is the Director of Bioscience and Entrepreneurial Inclusion at BioSTL. My goodness, welcome to the show, Doctor.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate you inviting me here to talk more about our initiative and what we're doing.
Fantastic. So first, for our listeners, talk a little bit about BioSTL and tell them kind of what that is and what it does, and then we'll get into your exciting initiative.
Absolutely. BioSTL actually started about 15 years ago under the another name, the Plant and Life Science Coalition here in the St. Louis market. And the focus there was they were looking at industries that were leaving actually St. Louis, big manufacturing industries and companies that left. And then how can we look at new industry growth? What are those industries that could sustain the St. Louis market if we have these other companies leaving? And one thing they did was look at our tremendous assets that we have on the bioscience and plant science side, from our institutions here, our academic institutions such as WashU, SLU, our Plant Science Center with Danforth, which is actually one of the top-rated plant science centers in the world, which most people don't know that about the Donald Danforth Plant Science Center. And the look at was really Dr. Danforth's vision. He was looking at how do we create an industry in the sciences, and specifically in the life science sector. So in this 15-year outgrowth of the Plant and Life Science Coalition, what they did was form committees around assets and how do we grow these assets. So one of those committees and the outgrowth of that was facilities. So from that, you have Cortex. And I think what people see now in the region with Cortex is all of the infrastructure that Cortex is bringing to the region, including Cambridge Innovation Center that's down in that region that came from Boston. You also have out of that the funding aspect, and that's where BioSTL, when they changed their name about 4 or 5 years ago to BioSTL from the Plant Life Science Coalition, what they looked at is how do we get more investment dollars to support these young startup organizations. So they created their subsidiary, which is the BioGenerator. And the BioGenerator is the investment arm of BioSTL. What they do is they look for great investments in startup companies that are on the life science side of the industry, and they make investments in those organizations. So you have that. You also have the BioGenerator Accelerator Lab. Those are the facility side that BioSTL also supports. So it was an outgrowth of a need. And what you see now is really the success of that outgrowth from Cortex, from CIC, Cambridge Innovation Center, from accelerators and incubators that are developing in our city.
Yeah, so again, we've kind of exploded into this life science, plant science hub, as you said.
Absolutely.
10 years ago, we had very little of that other than the universities, including it's been just a fantastic explosion of great opportunities
Absolutely.
for not only growth in that science field, but also growth in entrepreneurial opportunities. So let's talk a little bit about the Bioscience and Entrepreneur Inclusion Initiative, right? So again, a lot of times when we talk about diversity and inclusion, particularly from a work standpoint, we don't talk about the sciences, right? We talk about lots of other industries. So talk a little bit about, the genesis of this, the beginning of it, and kind of, I know you've had a whole lot of exciting activities and events, and you got more coming around the corner. I'd love to share with our audience.
Absolutely. Actually, our initiatives, BioSTL had conversations around inclusion in the life science sector since 2008. And privy to those conversations were the CEO level folks from organizations here in St. Louis, as well as some of our civic and philanthropic leaders here as well. So from 2008 to about 2012, they brought me on in 2012 to look at, now, we've had the conversations now, how do we now put together programming that will be effective? So that's when I came on board. We kicked off our inclusion efforts actually in 2014 as a pilot. It was a pilot program to see how can we attract more women and underrepresented minorities to think about or to consider starting high growth, high net worth businesses in the life science sector. And so that's what I was brought in to develop programming around that, because what we saw is that in this sector, and specifically in the life science industry, you had a dearth of minorities and women that were starting these type of businesses. They were well represented by men, as well as some of our other ethnicities, such as Asian and Indian Americans here in the U.S. So we're looking at how do we get these folks that are traditionally outside to start thinking about these types of opportunities. And our message was, first of all, you don't have to be a scientist to start a company in a life science sector. There are opportunities to start service-focused businesses. If you are a finance person or an accounting person and you're looking for a new opportunity outside maybe the corporate environment, here's a great opportunity where you have many startups that are already existing in our region, but they still need the functional roles there. So they still need CFOs. They still need people who have marketing backgrounds, strategists. And if you are a technical person, or if you do have a scientific background, there's opportunities from the universities if you're looking at licensing technology and commercializing that technology out of the university and you want to grow a company that way. So there are many opportunities if you're looking for a new opportunity to do that. So our target market was really those professionals that have great backgrounds, great skills, and looking to transition to become either an entrepreneur or have some type of entrepreneurial endeavor. We had 3 pillars for this pilot, and it was increasing awareness around those opportunities. It was also providing training for those folks who have great corporate skills to help them transition to become entrepreneurs, because it's a different animal. I mean, you still have great skills, but you still need to understand how to work in this type of environment. How do you raise money? How do you put together a great business plan? How do you do things, right? And then lastly, we also wanted to uncover what are those networks that are supportive of entrepreneurs in our region, that if you're not part of this ecosystem, you have no clue. So we were talking about uncovering the funding networks. who are the different type of archangels, the different types of pathways that you can use to grow your company, either dilutive ways or non-dilutive funding mechanisms.
And again, another interesting thing, St. Louis, not only in the plant sciences, but also in the front side capital for startups. All of a sudden, in the last 5 years or so, we've again been known as a region, surprisingly in my mind, that has a lot of availability of capital for startups.
Absolutely.
And particularly startups tied to this, again, the plant and life sciences field.
Yes, we used to be known as the flyover region from either the East Coast or West Coast, especially when you talk about venture capital money. And I think that's where the BioGenerator also has made great strides in bringing a lot of the venture capitalists from either coast here to St. Louis to take a look at the assets that we have here from an academic standpoint and the technologies that are coming out of those institutions from a commercialization standpoint, and looking at our life science companies startups that are existing today.
You have had some events, you got some more coming down the pike, because obviously, as you said, you want to attract people who may not have categorically thought, the plant sciences, the life sciences is a place where I can use some of my skill sets. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that are coming up around the corner that you can share with our audience. And obviously, I'm going to need to give them some contact information because I'm willing to bet they're going to want to reach out and get some more info.
Absolutely. Well, we just had an event last Friday at Harris Stowe, which we were very, very proud to put on. It was the first regional innovation inclusion event that we actually hosted, and we collaborated with I-10 as well as St. Louis Mix. And our focus was highlighting the opportunities within not only the science sector or bioscience sector, but at the intersection of bioscience with IT and advanced manufacturing. So this was the first ever of its kind in this region. We were very happy to host it. We had over 200 people attend this event, and we had notables such as Dr. Dedrick Carter, who is the new assistant and associate provost of Washington University, present. We had large corporations such as Toyota, Purina, Boeing also presented on their corporate innovation pathways. We involved St. Louis Community College and their interim president, Dr. Roderick Nunn, and he moderated a session there as well, too. So we were very pleased at the caliber of speakers that we brought in, and that was hosted at Harris Stowe last Friday. Looking forward, what we're looking to do is, again, last year we collaborated with Cortex and their Square One program, and it is a boot camp program for entrepreneurs. They're really thinking about, I really want to start to think about launching a business. It's a 10-week boot camp, and what it does is it provides vetted mentors, folks to come in. They meet every week. They provide information and substantial information on how to build a business plan, and it was broken into 3 segments. It was broken into life science, IT, and consumer side. So folks who are interested along those tracks of starting businesses, Cortex's Square One program is phenomenal. Last year we had, out of the inclusion initiative, it is a vetted program, so it's an application and selection process. They had 33 seats available. We thought we'd get 2 or 3 of our inclusion participants through that pathway. We actually seated 1/3 of the class through the inclusion initiative. And out of that, we had 2 companies, because at the end of that boot camp, companies pitch. They pitch for additional funding to start their companies with. So out of that class that pitched, 2 of them were inclusion initiatives that actually won funding not only from our organization, from BioSTL, but also from Cortex. And those companies are now building and moving forward in the region with new technologies.
How exciting. So as we come to a close, do 2 things for me. To our listeners who have a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit or want to leave their space, give them some thoughts from your vantage point about what BioSTL might be able to do for them, and particularly this entrepreneur and inclusion initiative that you run.
Well, I think what's most important, if you're thinking about looking at opportunities in the space, I would encourage you. This is a very collaborative region. It's a very collaborative environment with different community resource partners. Come out to Venture Cafe, which is held every Thursday. It's a huge networking event where people can come out, meet other people from the ecosystem, have an opportunity to collaborate. If you'd like to learn more about what BioSTL is doing, please go on our website, biostl.org, and go to the inclusion tab, and then you'll see some of the activities that we're involved in. You'll actually see some of the opportunities that we're going to be involved in the future too as well. So I would encourage you, come out, meet people in the industry, come out. It's an opportunity just to meet and learn more.
Give that website address one more time.
BioSTL.org.
Dr. Cheryl Watkins Moore, Director of Bioscience and Entrepreneurial Inclusion at BioSTL. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you again for having me.
We're going beyond.
Going Beyond is a presentation of Beyond Housing, helping entire communities become better places to live with RareGem Productions. Proudly promoting, presenting, and producing positive programming.
Neighborhood is where you live, and we want to keep it strong and vibrant. This is Chris Krehmeyer with Beyond Housing. We are going beyond.
Chris Krehmeyer, President and CEO of Beyond Housing, located at 4156 Manchester, phone number 314-533-0600. The only organization in the St. Louis region that offers access to affordable housing. Wherever we work, our goal is to help transform people, families, and communities so that they achieve the skills, strategies, resources, and commitment to succeed for the long term. See our work at beyondhousing.org. Podcast for Going Beyond can be heard, downloaded, and shared by visiting hallelujah1600.com. Listed under the music tab on demand. Going Beyond is another positive production of RareGem Productions.